Good afternoon, everyone. With everything going on in our climate, you're starting to see the media shift away from global warming when the Wall Street Journal calls into question the number one hyper of global warming, James Hansen, questioning the record of their defunct models that did not even call close to the reality on our planet. They're saying it should be 1.5 degrees above baseline when we're right at 0.18, not even 2/10. This record snow up in Newfoundland, Canada, is something to behold. And following right in line, GOP senators call for probe of federal grants on climate change where they're trying to train meteorologists on how to explain global warming to you. So when you see massive record snowfalls in Canada, and these trained meteorologists call it white rain instead of calling it summer snow, they have been trained very well. That's all I have to say about that, Eddie. The meteorologists don't want to talk about the shifting cloud cells on our planet due to the intensifying grand solar minimum that's going to bring us back to something either the Dalton or the Maunder minimum levels that are going to affect our crop production. It already is. Look at the snows over in Mount Etna in Italy over the last few days. Look at the snows in the Austrian Alps. Carpathian Mountains, Julian Alps, snow, and it's still snowing in Romania as well. The Arctic temperatures are below normal. Greenland ice sheet is still growing mass balance. Arctic sea ice at 16-year highs again. Antarctic sea ice right back a sliver away from the 1981 to 2010 average. But the trained meteorologists are saying it's the hottest day ever with their thermometers next to landing runways. And with our crops being affected, fully in play now, you are absolutely going to need to grow some of your own food. Microgreens packed full of nutrients. You can grow these 7 days or less. Amaranth sprouts, sunflower sprouts. I've left a link below for the Adapt 2030 link to TrueLeafMarket.com, as well as the links to all of tonight's stories and images. And with the world's weather shifting right into global cooling, without a doubt, it is around us all the time. There's so many signs. Our food crops are being lost, and here we go. The mainstream media is trying to protect themselves now. Wall Street Journal calling into question James Hansen, the number one person that the media around the world relied on to give us information about global warming, that ice caps were melting, Greenland was melting. Now the Wall Street Journal is calling into question his integrity of the models that they were running, questioning the projections that they had made that are not coming to fruition. We have definitely turned right now. This is the mark in history where global warming has ceased to exist. The charts in the article that they're referencing here are Hansen's 1988 climate models projecting that we would at least be at 1.5 degrees Celsius over baseline, run away up to 2C within 2050. That's just not panning out. We've actually turned back into the cooler phase here. We're only at 0.18 degrees Celsius above baseline. And you know, there is a difference between the land-based thermometers and then the satellite data. But you know what? They've been feeding us the satellite data is so correct that they can predict it down to 1,000th of a degree, that this is the new climate standard. So don't disavow this climate information coming from the satellites. You used it in your arguments, IPCC. You used it in your arguments, global warming proponents. Now here it is to bite you in the backside because it's showing cooling, and now you're saying, oh, we can't use that because it's not on the land. No, this is what you used to prove it. This is what it shows now. Not even 0.2 of a degree above the baseline. Also calling into Hansen's Greenland ice soon melting 2007 predictions. And also Peter Wadham's the entire Arctic would melt to less than 1 million square kilometers by 2013. Then they pushed it back to 2015. Now it's 2018 and we're gaining ice again. But first, let's take a look at Greenland. That blue line is where we are currently. Gaining ice now. We're not melting, and it's still snowing up on the Greenland ice cap there. I left all the links below. You can backtrack this, go straight to DMI and the NSIDC both. Now, the Greenland melt season took off to an early start, which the news grabbed onto, and whoa, you never heard the end of that. It's heat wave in the Arctic, and then it just suddenly ceased. It actually went below normal there. Where was the news coverage on the below normal? Gaining ice, not melting, in the beginning of June. And here we are, just right back to the averages again. That's why you're not hearing about Arctic melt too much in the media at the moment. As well, Arctic temperatures. This is the daily mean temperature of 80 degrees north all the way to the North Pole. Literally the entire top of the planet. From 80 degrees to 90 degrees. And it's still below normal temperatures. Because that green line, what you see, is the 1958 to 2000. Why is the news media not picking up on this? They're trying to tell you that the ice is melting into oblivion. I'm saying look at the ice extent June 25th. Now use your mind, use your eyes. Is the ice totally disappearing up there? And I want you to focus back in on Hudson Bay, because the Hudson Bay anomaly there is interesting. Over on the southeast side there, that orange line should be totally melted in that portion, but there's still ice. This is a Moody's composite of snow and ice across the northern hemisphere, June 12th to 18th. I understand it was just about a week and a half ago, but again, the media is trying to feed us that everything's melting into oblivion up there. But look how much ice and snow still covers the northern part of our planet. And with these temperatures staying below normal up there, the Arctic ice is at a 13-year high. Now this should be celebrated in the media. They should be popping champagne open that we have reversed and stopped the melt in the Arctic, which is the #1 main concern from CO2 was the melting Arctic. Well, it's stopped. Where's the celebration of this? And these charts come from the Danish Meteorological Institute, otherwise known as DMI, linked below as well. And Kirai Net coming out of Japan sharing some of the same information. Arigatou gozaimashita for sharing this across Asia. You're starting to see a lot of Asian publications now pushing the cooling. Understand that what's happening, it's way cool in the crop zones. Now jumping out for a wider portion of North America here, outside the Arctic, I don't see any record runaway heat like the media is portraying at the moment, although they are incredibly backtracking at the moment, trying to talk about why temperatures are cool, offering information, drip feeding these new lexicon words like grand solar minimum, global cooling, cloud cover layers. They're all starting to filter feed it to you now. Let's start with the summer snow up in Newfoundland. Record snow, I should say. This broke the records by 3 times the old record that was set a week ago previously in the past. We're talking about June 15th, June 18th records, but now we're just a couple days before July and we are absolutely in all-time records here. So you have to ask yourself, what would this really do to this lettuce and vegetables planted here in the planter box? Do you think it'll survive? Do you think it'll damage? Will it burn the leaves? Up to you. But whatever's happening, Newfoundland has lost so many crops even earlier in this year due to super freezes up there. Now we have these snows on top of full maturing vegetables coming out of the ground. And at the same time, meteorologist Eddie Shear, I can't even make this up, it's so bizarre. He's calling it white rain and refuses to call it SNOW, snow, because it's summertime. He's calling it white rain. This meteorologist has been trained in that program, How to Train the Meteorologist to Explain Global Warming. Even though it's near freezing, 2 degrees Celsius is what? 35 degrees Fahrenheit? Snow, record snow, but he chooses to call it white rain. White rain is going to persist across central and interior areas of Newfoundland. You mean heavy record, all-time record-breaking snows? And then he's so quirky and quippy. Oh, that's all I have to say about that. Ha ha ha, you're really funny. These are the record snows that are coming down, but you have these meteorologists calling this white rain. That is sickening. That is insulting. So when you see the GOP senators calling for probe of federal grants on climate change, saying that these programs on how to train meteorologists to explain global warming has moved beyond science into political action, here is a perfect case for you. It's irksome to say the least to see meteorologists calling record snow white rain. Although I will digress and I'll say the Seminole Indians, the Native American Seminoles in Florida, when the Everglades froze for 8 years during the winter, this is back in the Maunder Minimum, got to go back into 1630s approximately, They call the snow in the freezing of the Everglades the Great White Rain. But you got to realize that's way down in southern Florida when they would freeze over, where they could actually walk on the ice. It was that thick in the Everglades. So you got to think about 400 years later, almost all the flora and fauna are still there. So, they survived that freeze off pretty well. Summer snow blanketing parts of Newfoundland late June. I wonder what it's going to be when it says July. Because in Europe, they're still expecting snow in July. But when you go to try to load some of these videos on Global News, oops, error loading, can't play the media file. So then you have to jump into Twitter to find the real photos, Facebook. That's sad when you need to go to social media to find the photos of people taking in their backyards that the media won't show in their news stories about record snow in late June, almost July. Here we go. We got frost advisories, frost warnings, and Mr. Eddie White Rain Shear. Although he did put up a pretty cool picture here of Marble Mountain with the snow cover on top and the fog descending on that. That'd be freezing fog, by the way. Another truck stop, and he says, I wish I didn't have to do this. Actually show you the truth that there's record snow when we're pushing global warming as a meteorologist. But during the newsfeed here, I noticed this cyclonic spin that they showed in the cloud pattern. That was really interesting. It had that vortex low. And crawling across social media to get the true images of what's going on up there. The snow depths range from just a few inches to, completely covering the ground, 6+ inches. And then even the persons on social media were taking Eddie White Rain Shear to task here, calling him out. But every time they did, he would just write, ha ha, as a response to when people would question him calling record snow white rain. Let's take a look at anywhere you see that white. That's also where snow is coming down on Baffin Island. So it's not just the habited areas, predominantly Newfoundland. There's cities in there, there's agriculture in there. It's pretty easy for people to look out their backyard and see it. But Baffin Island is way less populated, way less populated. So to get images out of there to see the snowfall cover, a little more difficult. We're going to take a look at the solar cycle comparisons, which the meteorologists won't do. They don't even consider sunspots or solar activity into a driver on our climate. They've been trained through public programs funded in part by governments to train meteorologists on how to explain global warming, that they just don't look into these types of data sets. It's only CO2. Well, we are getting right back into something that's starting to destroy our crops globally at the moment. There's almost no country that hasn't been touched with crop losses this year, either due to atmospheric compression event, once in a 500-year flood, once in a 1,000-year flood. We saw in Somalia all-time record floods ever recorded. The deserts are blooming again in places. We got lakes forming in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Oman from the massive cyclone that came through. We got rivers refilling in northern Afghanistan that haven't seen rain in 3,000 years. There is absolutely something going on with our cloud pattern shifting, and it's all related to the grand solar minimum. Our magnetosphere is weakening, our jet streams are shifting, and these cloud cells are shifting. Meteorologists, you're supposed to be talking about clouds. This is shifting. This should be a #1 focus for your listeners and readers because it is affecting our food production at the moment. Your food's going to be just skyrocketing at the end of the year. And from that point forward, we're looking at something like 3 to 4 times food pricing over the next couple of years. That's going to destroy the consumer spending economy. This is going to rip us down to the base, just like it did in 2008 and 9. I mean, you have to eat every day. Back in 2008 and 9, when the economy collapsed due to high fuel prices, you could carpool, you could take a bus, you could ride a bicycle, you could alleviate some of that pain point on your fuel pricing. You can't do that with food. You eat or you die. That's the simple fact. Economy is going to shatter when food prices double, triple, quadruple. Yet the meteorologists are just so super content to use the whatever thermometer readings are given by NASA and NOAA. Oh, it's the hottest day ever. Yeah, we put the thermometers at the end of airport landing runways, and in parking lots, and at intersections in busy city centers. Well, it's a heat island after all, right? And over the last couple of weeks, you saw an enormous amount of articles talking about Antarctic ice just melting. Well, the sea ice is extending. We're right back up to the 1981-2010 average. And lo and behold, Southern Hemisphere ice extent anomalies, 1979-2018, that shows an upward trend. See, these types of inconvenient slides just don't make it into the media. And this comes from NSIDC. Linked below as well so you can backtrack. And if you haven't been following the record snows in Europe as well for almost July, here's what we got on Etna over the last few days. Now, they were about to get absolutely pounded with record rains, massive floods. Greece just had all-time record floods the day before yesterday. Now, some of this is going to, again, turn into snow on the peaks. So if this was it before the massive storms rolled in, I'm really wondering after the storms clear what kind of snow coverage we'll get on the peaks again. Because this is prior to the massive front rolling in. They got this much snow prior to what's coming in terms of record precipitation across the Alps. This is back on June 25th. The massive rain started on the 27th, so this is going to be added to. There's almost a foot of snow. We're just a few days before July, and it was all across the Alps, all the way from Austria through Italy, Slovenia, Ukraine, Romania, Poland and Slovakia in the Tartas Mountains. You know, we look at these kind of trends. Switzerland record snowfall for their entire year. That's 2018 top entry. And we go back another year, 2017, abnormal snow and cold damaging trees, and it did. And we go back to 2016, and the Tour de Switzerland was shortened due to being too cold. The riders couldn't get up there. It was snowing, windy, and icing on the road, so they had to cancel that leg. So you can see the trend is continuing. All-time record snowfall in Switzerland as well, and it just keeps mounting and mounting. And we got record snow down in Australia. They had that frost event all 1,500 miles south of the equator. Unusual typhoons and cyclonic spins off of Peru out in the colder ocean, which makes no sense last month. I mean, things are really changing. They're in damage control to explain it. Our crops are being lost, and you really need to protect yourself. This is no BS assessment. You really, really need to get ready like yesterday. It is here, and by the time you realize what's going on, it's going to be far too late. You're going to have zero time to prepare. Actually, you're going to have less than zero time to prepare. Because when the global populace wakes up to what's going on, probably at the end of the year, everybody's going to rush out and start buying everything in mass panic, and just the price drive on that alone is going to cause inflation where things, just because the demand for it is going to double and triple your prices. We are in the twilight zone so deeply right now. I encourage you so highly, please look at all the links in tonight's video. They're all in the description box below. Check down all the graphs. Run through the sites that are included. There's many more graphs that I just didn't put in here. There's so many more smaller variants in size showing you the larger picture. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video.